Hello, third grade, and welcome to Chapter 4, Module 4, Lesson 3. In this lesson, we are going to be focusing on inherited and learned traits. Let's go ahead and start with our short video, and then we're going to jump into the rest of our reading.
Oh, hello! I'm Poppy, and I just spotted a bald eagle with my binoculars. I love watching wildlife. That's why I want to be a park ranger when I grow up. Park rangers protect and preserve the park and help keep people safe from dangers within the park. To be a park ranger, you have to know a lot about plants and animals. That's why I try to observe them as much as I can. If you like plants and animals and being outdoors, then you might want to be a park ranger too.
All right, let's go ahead and get into our lesson. Like I said, our lesson this week is Parents and Offspring. This is lesson 3 of that chapter, titled Inherited and Learned Traits. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into our first page, as always. And we're going to read through this section, decide which one of the friends you agree with the most, and explain why you agree. Please remember to use complete sentences and watch your spelling and punctuation. Once you've completed this, we're going to take a look at the photo of the mice, and you have to ask yourself, how are they alike? How are they different? And what questions do you have? So answer these 2 questions and then write some questions of your own. Let's go ahead and take a look at that picture together. Here's the picture of the mice. We have the 2 mice right here. You can go ahead and pause the video while you answer those questions and write down your own questions. Once you've completed that, you're going to read the STEM career connection about the geneticist, and then you're going to answer our 2 questions on the following page. What do you think the term genetics means? And where does the geneticist do most of his or her work? And then go ahead and give your best guess for our essential question. What affects an organism's traits? Remember, the word organism means a living thing. Whether it's a plant or an animal, organisms are just things that are alive. After you've answered those questions completely and neatly, we're going to go on to our next page, and this is an activity titled Graphing Inherited Traits. So which observable traits are the most common? Remember, the word observable means you can see them. So what things are most common that you can see? Someone's traits might be their hair color or their eye color, or how tall or short they are. All of these different things are traits. So observable traits are the ones that you can see. You'll collect data for 3 of the traits: freckles, eye color, and hairline, to see which one is the most common. Now, for those of you that are working from home, you're going to be doing this activity just with people in your household. You're going to make your prediction. Which trait do you think will be most common in your class or in your home, and why? And then you're going to carry out the investigation. Look in a mirror. Do you have freckles on your face? Record whether or not you have freckles. What color eyes do you have? Record that. Pull your hair back so you can see your forehead. Observe your hairline in the mirror. Is it straight across or does it come to a point? Record your hairline over here. And then you're going to ask and collect data from people in your household, the number of people that have these different ones. And then on a separate sheet of paper, you're going to draw a bar graph. If you don't want to do it on a separate paper, you can do it here at the bottom of your pages. Just make sure when you scan and upload, you have all the important parts of a bar graph. It has a title, it's neat and organized, it has labels. Then use the bar graph to determine, remember determine means decide, use the bar graph to decide which inherited trait was the most common, which one you found most often, and write the most common trait below. Was your prediction about the most common trait correct? Have you noticed traits shared by people who are related? Explain. So have you noticed that certain people who are related have similar traits? Maybe they have the same eye color, or maybe they all have curly hair or straight hair. Maybe they're all about the same height. Once you've completed those using complete sentences, we're going to go on and we're going to take a look at our vocabulary for this lesson. This lesson's vocabulary words are inherit, trait, instinct, and variation. So we're going to look at the meaning of those words, and then we're going to watch this short video titled Inherited Traits on Genetics. We're going to answer the question after we finished watching. What does the word inherit mean? And what is an example of an inherited trait that you cannot see? Let's go ahead and pull up our vocabulary. Now, our vocabulary for this lesson, the word inherit is a characteristic that is passed from parents to offspring. So something you get from your parents. A trait is a feature of a living thing. Could be the way they look, the way they act, how big or small they are. Those are all traits. Instincts are inherited behaviors, and they're ones that are not learned, but they're done automatically. So something that an organism, whether it's a plant or animal, does on its own without having to learn how to do it from an adult or from a parent animal. And the word variation means being similar to something else, but different in some ways. So there's a little bit of variety there. So you may look kind of like something, but not completely. All right, let's pull up our video next on inherited traits.
Have you ever been told that you look like one of your parents, or your brother, or your sister? Why do members of the same family tend to look like one another? It is all because of something called genetics, or the study of genes. Each living organism, even animals and plants, are made up of cells that contain genes. Genes determine traits, and parents pass these traits on to their children. That is why families of animals and plants look the same too. Let us look at this family. What physical traits did these children inherit from their parents? Notice how these children have blonde hair and blue eyes, just like their parents? And notice how their daughter has light eyes like her mother, and the son has black hair like his father. Those are inherited traits, passed down through genes. There are other less obvious traits we inherit that you cannot always tell from looking at a person. One of those traits is color blindness, or the inability to see certain colors. Parents who are colorblind can pass the trait on to their children. When you write with a pencil or pen, do you write with your left hand or your right hand? You can thank your parents for that trait. Now clasp your hands together, interlocking your fingers. Is your right thumb or your left thumb on top? This is also a trait we inherit through genes from our parents. Next time you are at a gathering, see how many genetic similarities you can identify. Have you ever been told that you look like one of your parents?
All right, let's go ahead and jump back into our questions. And you can go ahead and answer these two questions. What does the word inherit mean? And what is an example of an inherited trait that you cannot see? Both of these answers were in our video. Next, we're going to open up our science handbook. That's our textbook. And answer the question after you finished reading. Where do offspring get their inherited traits? All right, page 76, inherited traits. Every organism has traits that make it unique. Eyes and hair color are examples of traits. The shape of your earlobes and whether you can roll your tongue are traits. Traits help you recognize and describe an organism. Where do an organism's traits come from? Part of the answer is heredity. Heredity is the passing of traits from parents to offspring. Traits that come from parents are called inherited traits. Your eye color and hair color are inherited traits. The number of legs an animal has is also inherited. Inherited traits make animals look like their parents. Inherited traits can also affect the way an animal acts. Reflexes, such as blinking, and actions are actions that the parents pass on to their offspring. So are instincts. An instinct is a way of acting that an animal does not have to learn. Birds build nests and spiders spin webs by instinct. Many instincts help animals to survive. Geneticist. Geneticists study traits and heredity in organisms. They develop ways to develop desired inherited traits in plants and animals. Learn more about careers as a geneticist in the career section. So here we're talking about two different things. We're talking about inherited traits and we're talking about instinct. So inherited traits are things you get from your parents, like your eye color or hair color, or if you're right or left-handed. Instincts are things that animals or organisms do that they didn't have to be taught how to do. Birds instinctually know how to make a nest. Their mom bird didn't teach it to them. They just know. Spiders know how to spin webs. They didn't have to be taught that by other spiders. They were just born knowing how to do it. So let's jump back into our pages. Where do offspring get their inherited traits? You can go back, to the reading. This middle paragraph that we read about helps you answer that question. Next, we're going to read the science file Inherited Physical and Behavioral Traits to learn about a trait of one type of mammal. Then we're going to answer the question after we're done reading. Our question is, describe a way in which the physical trait and the behavioral traits of a bush baby are related. Inherited physical and behavioral traits. You've learned that offspring, which means the babies, can inherit both physical and behavioral traits. The bush baby is a primate that lives on the continent of Africa. Look at the list of inherited traits below, then read about how these traits help the bush baby to survive. Physical traits: large eyes to help it see in the dark, large pupils to help it see in the dark, large ears for exceptional hearing, large feet and toes to grip branches and catch small animals for food, long tails to help balance while climbing in trees. Behavioral traits: nocturnal, they're awake at night, spends hours grooming and playing in small groups, searches for food alone. While searching for food, moves quickly through the trees on 4 legs and on 2. Because of its large eyes, pupils, and ears, the bush baby can see and hear very well at night. This helps these animals to avoid predators and to find their own food in the dark. The large feet and toes and long tail help the bush baby to climb easily through trees, which helps when playing in groups or searching for food quietly through the trees. All right, go ahead and answer your question. Describe a way in which the physical trait and the behavioral traits of the bush baby are related. So go back and think about what we were saying in this last paragraph, how a lot of these different things in both sections are related and how they help it to survive. Next, we're going to explore the digital interactive variety of inherited traits to learn more about inherited traits in animals and plants. And then we're going to answer the following questions after we finished. Number 5, describe 2 inherited traits of a fish. Classify the traits as either physical trait or an instinct. Number 6, do the tulips always have the exact same color as their parents? What might cause this? Use evidence from the photo to support your thoughts.
Fish. Fins. Fins are an inherited trait that helps fish swim. Fins are located on different parts of the body and serve different purposes. They help fish turn, move forward, and stop. Some rare fish even use fins as protection and to help get food. Scales. Fish have scales to protect their soft bodies. Scales are actually bony in structure and lay on top of each other. They bend and slide a little so that the fish can move. Scales are sometimes colorful and can show how old a fish is. Gills. Fish have gills that allow them to breathe underwater. Water flows in through their mouth over the gills, and then oxygen is removed from the water. The gills on this fish are on the sides of its body. Spider. Body. Spiders have two body parts. The front segment is called the cephalothorax. The spider's eyes, mouth, stomach, and brain are in this part of the body. The legs are also connected to this part. The back end of the spider is called the abdomen. This is where the spinnerets are located. This part allows the spider to produce silk to make webs. All of these traits are inherited from their parents. Eyes. Most spiders have 8 tiny eyes, although some have less or even no eyes at all. The number of eyes is inherited from its parents. Scientists can identify different types of spiders according to the number of eyes they have and the way they are arranged. Legs. All spiders have 8 legs. This is something they inherit from their parents. This helps most spiders make webs and allows them to crawl and climb on things easily. Elk. Stomach. Because elk eat grass, shrubs, tree limbs, and bark, they have inherited an interesting way of digesting food from their parents. Every elk has a 4-part stomach. Each section of the stomach is used to help digest these tough parts of plants that they eat. Antlers. Male elk grow antlers as a way to protect themselves and to attract female elk. The antlers can be up to 40 pounds. Coat. Elk have 2 coats, one for summer and one for winter. They inherit the ability to grow and lose their hair from their parents. Their coats allow them to regulate their body temperature so that they don't get too hot or too cold. They completely shed their heavy winter coat in the spring. They then grow a thin summer coat that only lasts a couple of months before they begin to grow their winter coat again. Tulips. Flower. These flowers are tulips. They have inherited their shape and color from their parents. Flowers can come in many different colors, even from the same parents. Leaves. The leaves of a plant can be different size and shape. Some leaves are very wide. Some have many points, while others are more round. Although they may not look exactly alike, they are similar. Dogs. Eye color. Eye color is another trait that is inherited from their parents. These puppies have very similar eye color. Their parents probably have similar eye color too. Fur wave. Some dogs have curlier hair than their siblings. Look at the 2 puppies. Observe the difference in the hair on their ears. One parent probably has curlier hair than the other. Fur color. These puppies have the same parents, but they have different patterns of color in their fur.
All right, go ahead and take the information that we gathered here. To help you answer these questions, describe 2 inherited traits of a fish. Classify if the traits are either physical or instinct. Number 6, do tulips always have the same exact color as their parents? What might cause this? Use evidence from the photo to support your thoughts. So for this one, you have to do a little bit of thinking. Now, if you have the parent tulips, maybe one of them is red and one of them is yellow. You're not necessarily going to get just red or just yellow, but you might get a tulip that has red and yellow in it. So go back to the picture of the tulips and you can use more examples from the picture to describe your answer. Next, we're going to read page 77 in the science handbook and answer the following question. How is a learned trait different from an inherited trait? And we're going to investigate how the environment affects plants by conducting a simulation and then answer the questions. How did the environment affect the plant? All right, let's go ahead and close out these things that we already finished. All right, now for page 77, learned and environmental traits. Some of your traits come from your parents, others you've learned. People and animals can gain new skills over time. These new skills are called learned traits. Learning to ride a bicycle or play the piano are learned traits. Some traits are affected by the environment. For example, your hair may get lighter from being in sunlight. A rabbit may grow fat when it finds a lot of food. It may grow thin when the food is hard to find. These types of traits are called environmental traits. Learned traits and environmental traits are not passed from the parents to the offspring. Your parents may know how to ride a bike, but you may still have to learn that skill yourself. If your parent has a scar, you were not born with the same scar. Did you know if you have a kitten or a puppy around an older cat or dog, the older pet will often teach the younger pet lessons it learned from humans. For example, adult cats may train kittens to use the litter boxes, and dogs may help teach puppies to walk by their owner's side. So let's go back and answer our questions. Oops. On inherited and learned, on learned and environmental traits. So you can go back to your workbook pages for that. Remember, environmental traits are things that happen or change because of things going on in the environment. So having a lot of food means an organism may grow fatter. Not having enough food in an environment may make the organism be thinner. Learned traits are things that you learn how to do. You learn them after you're born, after you grow. It's not something you just know how to do, such as riding a bike or mountain climbing or skateboarding. Those are all things that you need to learn how to do. All right, next we're going to go through and take a look at that simulation. And answer the remaining questions about what happens to the plant when we're changing things in its environment. Welcome to the growing plant. You're here to learn about how the environment affects what a plant looks like and what it needs to grow. You will grow a plant for 30 days and discover how light and water affect its growth. Press the next button to start your first experiment. Before you start, set where the sun is coming from once with the sun slider. Then change the amount of shade with the tree slider. Change the amount of water with the rain slider. Click the play button to start growing. Try varying these shade and water, the shade and water during the experiment. Okay, so here's our little plants. We are going to first, maybe we'll give it a lot of sunlight. So very little shade, a lot of direct sunlight. And we'll give it just a little bit of water and see what happens. So we're going to be watching what happens over the course of 30 days. So we see our plant is growing. It grew some leaves. It grew taller. What happens if we give it a lot of water? So let's go back. And now we have a lot of sunlight directly above it, and we'll give it a lot of water. So here we can see our plant is growing as well. Lots and lots of water. What if we move our sun slider? So let's go back and say our sun is way over here on the side. Let's see what's going to happen when we have medium amount of shade, lots of water, and only sunlight coming from one side. Okay, we see that our plant grew again. Let's try taking down the water and putting lots of shade. See what happens. So that's after 12 days, we can keep going. But as it keeps growing after 18 days, it's not getting enough sunlight. So we see that our plant is starting to die. And by day 24, oh no, the plant died. So let's see what happened. There was a lot of shade and a little bit of water. So if there's a lot of shade, that means it's not getting the sunlight that it needs to produce its food through photosynthesis. It's not getting enough water. It's not able to pull nutrients and things from the ground. So let's try again. What if we have, let's move our sunlight slider. We'll put the sun on the other side, and we will put a little less than half the shade and lots of water. Let's watch what happens. So after 6 days, we see it growing. Another 6 days, after 12 days, it's still growing. Got more leaves, it's growing taller. After 12 days, it's getting so much water that the plant is starting to die. And then once we got to 24 days, our plant died again. So this time we gave it lots of water, but it had too much water. So let's reset. A medium amount of water and some shade, but not much. Again, our plant is growing. It's getting some sunlight from here. It's getting enough water. After 6 days, it's growing taller. We've got more leaves. All right, it's looking good so far. After 18 days, our leaves are getting bigger and we're sprouting even more leaves. After 24 days, again, bigger with more leaves. But after 30 days, our plant lived, but it's kind of wilting a little bit. You can see that the leaves are kind of droopy. So use all of these different examples to finish answering the questions on your workbook page. Then we're going to move on and we're going to read about pea plants. So we're going to read the science file, Pea Plants on the History of Genetics. We're going to answer the questions after we finish the reading. What observation did Gregor Mendel make that led to the science of genetics? Number 2, what trait did Mendel study in pea plants? Number 3, what happened when pea plants with purple flowers reproduced with plants that had white flowers? And number 4, what does the word dominant mean? So let's go ahead and take a look at that information to close out our book. Pea plants. When plants and animals reproduce, how can we tell what they will look like? The study of the way living things inherit traits is called genetics. In the 1800s, a man named Gregor Mendel introduced the idea of genetics. He observed that we can often predict the traits of offspring that offspring will have by looking at the traits of the parents. Mendel did experiments with pea plants. He predicted what flower color the offspring would likely have based on the flower color of the parents. He found that parents with purple flowers would likely have offspring with purple flowers. He also found that the parents with the white flowers would likely have offspring with white flowers. What would happen if plants with purple flowers reproduced with plants that had white flowers? The result was a mix. 3 of the 4 offspring had purple flowers, and only 1 of the 4 offspring had white flowers. Mendel did thousands of experiments with pea plants to understand how traits could be predicted. The passing down of human traits works in a very similar way. Some traits are dominant or stronger than others. For example, darker hair is dominant over lighter hair. Gregor Mendel experimented with pea plants to understand how traits are passed from parents to offspring. So we're going to use the information that we gathered from this handout to answer our questions. What observation did Gregor Mendel make that led to the science of genetics? So what did he see or what did he observe? Number 2, what trait did Mendel study in pea plants? So what was it about the pea plants that he was watching and looking for So you're going to find that the experiment and the description here in the second paragraph. Number 3, what happened when pea plants with purple flowers reproduced with pea plants that had white flowers? That's going to be in our third paragraph here. And number 4, what does the word dominant mean? We have that information here in our fourth paragraph. Once you've completed those pages, we're going to go on to our last 2 pages of this lesson, and we're going to read our questions before we start answering. So the performance task here says mouse fur color inheritance. Think about the 2 mice at the beginning of the lesson. Each had a different fur color. Conduct research to find out whether fur color in mice is an inherited trait. What question will your research help to answer? Communicate information. Make an argument. Is fur color an inherited trait in mice? Use the information that you found in your research as evidence to support your argument. Number 2, do you think that the mice in the picture have any other physical inherited traits? What are they? And our essential question, what affects an organism's traits? Think about the photo of the gray mouse and the white mouse. Use the mice as an example to help explain things that might affect an organism's traits. So to do your performance task, you are going to have to research this. You're going to have to look it up in a book or online to decide if fur color is an inherited trait. You're going to write your question, make and support your argument, and think about what other traits in a mouse may be inherited. So we can go back and take a look at the picture of the mice from the beginning of our lesson. So think about what other traits other than the fur color might also be inherited traits. And then once you've answered your essential question, you're done. You don't need to do the I did statement. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.